Good afternoon, everybody. It is 12 noon here on a Friday afternoon. Seth and Sean Sports Radio here. We actually got the right Seth and Sean. Seth's over there. I'm Sean over here.
Shazam!
Shazam. You know why it's Shazam? Because you are taking control of today's show, my friend.
Man.
It's college football, and I know next to nothing about this.
How much college football are we really going to talk here since you don't know? So pretty much I get to hear myself talk for 30 minutes.
Well, look.
While that may be my dream, it's not practically speaking, it's not.
Look, I am certainly open to asking the questions, but you are certainly going to have to answer them, my friend. That's just the way this works. For the one show out of the year that I know next to nothing, well, actually, Seth,
I actually have to mute you take me off for 2 seconds. I have to take.
All right. Well, there we go. So much for that. He knows so much, and yet I know so little, and we're getting to that point. But just a little recap here. So this week we are going to have the college football preview. Next week we have the fantasy football preview, which is one of my favorite shows. And then we have the NFL preview right before the start of the NFL season, which will be September 7th. So the 7th or 8th, we haven't decided on that. And the start of the NFL season is actually the night of the 8th, right after Labor Day weekend. I believe Seth is actually off next week. No, he's leaving on the 25th. So we will have a show on the 24th. That will be our fantasy football preview. It looks like Seth is back. Seth, you'll be here for next week, correct? On Wednesday.
Yeah, I leave on Thursday.
Okay, so we will have that show on Wednesday night. We'll have our fantasy football preview where we will discuss all things keepers, because that's basically where you're coming down at this point. I know you, Seth, have had a draft so far, at least one, if not two.
I've had one. I'm in the middle of my second, which is now going on about 10 days.
Right. Well, the spreadsheet draft, ladies and gentlemen, is not necessarily a great idea. Let's just throw it out there. It's just not a good idea. There are many ways to do a draft. My opinion is you can do them in person, which is obviously the best way. It's over very quickly. An auction or a snake draft. You can do it online, which is a little bit less personal, but certainly expedient, where there is somebody else tracking. And then you have the aforementioned Excel spreadsheet draft, which is never a good idea because it doesn't allow for people to have time constraints. And as Seth is saying, I think he's on week 2 of his, and he's only at 7.
Yeah, I'm about 10 picks in. Let's see where we are. Actually, I can take a look. We are in the middle of the 11th round.
Okay.
But
it's taken a while.
It's taken we started this, I believe, on Wednesday or Thursday.
So it's taken a little bit of time. So
no, it's about a week yet.
All right. So let me be blunt and say who's winning the national championship this year?
Alabama.
All right. That's first and foremost. Are they winning it over? So who are your playoff teams? This is how this is going to go. I'm going to run through it this way. Who are your playoff teams?
Realistically, there are 2 teams, and then there is everybody else.
Georgia. Back to Georgia.
No, Georgia lost so many players.
Yeah,
I mean, they lost
most of their defense.
Yeah, they lost 8 defensive players off of an all-time great defense, including first-round picks like Lewisine and
Jordan Davis.
Yep. And I mean, they also lost was in Nakobe Dean, who's a part of the linebacking crew. They lost George Pickens, who was their best wide receiver, who didn't play most of the year. They lost James Cook on the offensive end. I mean, look, they're going to be in the running. I think they are a significant step behind Ohio State and behind Ohio State and Alabama.
Okay, so what makes Ohio? Well, we know what makes Alabama good because they're just Alabama. But what makes Ohio State better this year than they have in the past couple?
Well, first of all, they've been pretty damn good in the last couple. But C.J. Stroud, who is probably the co-Heisman favorite going in, who threw for about 890,000 yards against Utah in the Rose Bowl. Even though they lost Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, they still have back Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's one of the 3 or 4 best receivers in the country. More relevant, they have Trayvon Henderson, the running back. But more relevantly, where their weakness has been is the defense on the defensive end. and they brought in the defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, from Oklahoma State, who I believe won the Broyles Award for Best Defensive Coordinator, I think, or he was in the running for it. I forget Broyles is best assistant coach or best defensive coach. I just don't remember.
It's best overall coach. It's best assistant coaches.
I believe he won it. If not, he was in the finalists. I think they'll be better on that end. I don't think the Big Ten is particularly strong. I know people are going crazy about Michigan. I think Michigan takes a step back, at least a little bit. If you're going to have to depend on Michigan offense, I'm just not convinced that either J.J. McNamara or Cade McCarthy or did I flick those? J.J. McCarthy or Cade McNamara. Either way. They lost Aiden Hutchinson. They lost Ojabo. They'll be very good. Michigan State will be good. Penn State will be there, but it's not an overwhelmingly strong. I think if Ohio State gets past Notre Dame in the first game of the season, which I believe they will, then I think they'll go undefeated, and you're going to see two teams significantly above everybody else this year.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So Notre Dame playing a really tough game, obviously, in the first game of the year. Are they going to be able to rebound and make this playoff, or is that out of
I don't think so, because I think they'll be very good. I think Marcus Freeman was a great choice as a successor coach for Brian Kelly, who went to LSU. I think they lost their quarterback, they lost their running back, they lost their number one wideout. They still have Mike Meyer, who's the best tight end in the country, but I don't think they beat Ohio State. And I'm sure they're going to, and again, I haven't gone through their schedule. I think they'll lose one or two along the way. I think they'll be looking at a New Year's Six bowl as usual.
So give me some teams, and we'll eventually get to the winners of each of these conferences. Give me some teams that you think are going to surprise. Because I've done some research. I got some on the tip of my.
You've done some research?
I've done some research.
You?
I have on college football. I've done some research. I got some research going on, and I think that you may be surprised by some of the surprises that I believe are going to make a little bit.
Do you believe Nebraska is going to go to the NCAA playoff?
No. I'm never ever going to live that one down.
No, you're not. You're not.
And that's okay. Look, you gotta aim big to win big. So I'm perfectly okay with that. You gotta take a chance every once in a while. But give me some surprise teams.
Well, I think you're going to see. I think Purdue is going to have the Big Ten West. You have the three best teams in the division are in the Big Ten East, which is Ohio State, Michigan State. I think you kind of have a free-for-all in the West. Northwestern, Iowa, Minnesota with CJ Flack, or PJ Flack, excuse me. And Purdue, I think, is going to be good. I think this is Jeff Brom's last year in Purdue before he gets the big jump somewhere else. I think NC State is really dangerous this year, led by Heisman candidate Devin Leary. I think they have a legitimate chance to win the ACC. I'm not sold on Clemson coming in. The quarterback, DJ, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, was not great as a freshman last year. They lost their offensive coordinator, Tony Elliott, to being the head coach of Virginia. They lost their defensive coordinator, Brad Venables, to being the head coach of Oklahoma. By default, it's kind of hard to say they're not going to win the ACC. But I think NC State's going to give them a real run. I think Miami with Mario Cristobal is a year away.
All right, so here are my predictions, some of my predictions. You'll be happy with the first one. I think Maryland beats one of the top four in your division. I think they beat either Michigan or Michigan State or Ohio State or Penn State. I don't think they're at the top of the division. I don't think that they're
Who is this?
Your team. I think your Terps are going to beat one of the top four in their division this year. I think that, Shockley has done a good job. I think that what's that? Well, sorry, Loxley has done a good. Loxley has done a good job. I think recruiting has come up. I think, are they on the precipice of winning the East Division? No, and I'm not sure unless Ohio State, Michigan both get dinged by recruiting violations, which I'm not really sure what a recruiting
I
violation.
don't know what a recruiting violation is anymore. So
I don't know what it could be now that NIL is. Maybe strippers. I mean, that may be the only recruiting violation.
Then every football team would be on probation.
But then why can't you sponsor the strippers and sponsor the strip club? I mean,
I gave to charity.
I'm surprised that hasn't come.
Just happened to be dancing at the Bada Bing.
I gotta tell you, I'm surprised that hasn't come about yet. That some player hasn't said, you know what, I'll sponsor your strip club, and I just want free lap dances for the rest of the time. But anyway,
what makes you think it hasn't?
Yeah, well, I would think that one would have actually gotten noticed by the media.
Probably.
I got to think. But anyway, especially if it happened at Louisville. But okay, so I think what?
I said, who would want a stripper from Louisville?
Look, that's where they got dinged on the last probation, was based on strippers. It was based on Rick Pitino.
That's when Pitino was getting blackmailed.
Yeah, yep. So anyway, well, now he's at Iona. But anyway, I think Loxley, you get one of those wins. You either beat Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, or Penn State. So you may beat two, but I think you definitely beat one. Just my opinion. Okay, what else? I don't think a quarterback wins the Heisman this year.
Me either.
And that would be very rare for a quarterback not to win the Heisman.
I'll go further. I think you're going to have your second defensive player win the Heisman.
Will Anderson?
No. Will Anderson was the best player in the country last year. He'll be the best player in the country this year.
So I think it'll either be him or it'll be the wide receiver out of Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to do
Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Yeah, I think he's going to do, and it's interesting because
when was the last wide receiver we saw win the Heisman?
Was Tim Brown?
Tim Brown?
Well, if Woodson doesn't count, right?
Woodson's a corner. Woodson was a corner. Yeah.
It's got to be. I mean, I think there's only been one. It's only been Tim Brown. That's it. I don't think any other wide receivers ever won the Heisman.
Since this generation, it could be. I mean, going back, you have a lot of guys who did, but before that, he's the most recent that I can think of. Yeah. So, but the question is, because his volume is going to be based on C.J. Stroud, does Stroud get either breaking that Heisman vote, or does Stroud actually get the votes because he's feeding it? It's kind of like the fantasy question, right? It's the issue we've seen before with Heisman. When you have two players on the same team.
That's correct.
And right. So to me, look, I'm not going to argue with. I mean, I'm not going to. I think it's Anderson, or I think he's one of the rare defensive favorites going in. I think you're looking at Robinson, the running back from Texas. If Texas can get their head out of their ass and get,
and I don't think that happens. I think Sarkisian is fired this year. I think he's gone. I think that's it. He's done.
After 2 years.
Yeah, I don't think you see. The thing is, there's no winning at Texas. You can't win. It's a no-win situation there.
Unless you're the basketball coach, then it's a no-lose situation.
Well, yeah. I mean, the football coach is a no-win situation. I can't see how, unless you're Alabama in Texas, how you become, and now you're moving into the SEC. Seth, how does a coach win there?
You can't. Well, let's be honest here. You're not moving to win in the NFC in the SEC. You're moving.
No, you're winning. You're moving to survive because right now that's all it is.
Right. Well, no, Texas and Oklahoma were surviving quite nicely. The USC UCLA gig is a little different because UCLA. We'll get into that in a second. But if right now, I think you have this year and next year for Texas, right? Is that it? Mm-hmm. So. If you don't fire Sarkisian this year, let's play this out. Assuming it's not a great year, which I've seen is it's not going to be a tremendous year. It'll be okay, but it will not be a Texas year, right? It will not be something that you're going to be winning your division. So, are you going to fire Sarkisian next year and bring in a guy for the first year of the SEC? I think that's just wasted. I can't see anybody surviving that. So it's either this year or you're leaving Sarkisian in for 2 more years. It's kind of the I'll say this, the Maryland basketball guy, Mark Turgeon rule, whereas
hey, we got him, so we might as well keep him. We're not going to let him go.
By the way, have you seen our recruiting so far this year?
I have.
Oh
well
my.
done.
So this is what having a coach who can recruit means.
We're not talking basketball yet. Basketball is in about a month and a half. We'll get there, and we'll see that smile come on your face again. But the fact is, look, I don't think he survives the year. Maybe he survives the year and gets fired, but I don't think he goes into next year as the Texas coach. And my last prediction, Alabama does not win the SEC.
You going with A&M?
I'm going Mississippi State.
What?
No, I'm sorry, Ole Miss, not Mississippi State. I always correct.
What?
I'm taking Ole Miss to beat them. Yep.
You're taking the Fighting Kiffins?
I am.
Does Kiffin go to Texas when they fire Sarkisian after this?
Maybe. That's
you
not
realize
that
their quarterback is gone, right?
They lost Matt Carroll. Yep.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay.
I got to pull out something every year, right? So you can
you pulled this one. I hope you're right. What we're almost seeing is the equivalent of the Premier League where you have Manchester City and Liverpool and everyone else is playing for third or fourth. It's not fun unless you're an Alabama fan or an Ohio State fan or I guess a Georgia fan, where literally 95% of the teams can't win a national title.
And understand, Alabama could still win a national championship without winning the SEC.
That's a much harder call.
Agreed, but they could, right?
Yes, they would. They
lose in the SEC championship game. That's the only game that they lose to Ole Miss.
Yes. If they go undefeated and then they lose to Ole Miss in the SEC championship game,
they're in the playoff.
Yeah, they'll still go. They'll be like Georgia was last year. They'll be a 3
That's right. They're still in the playoff and they could still win the championship. If they lose to Ole Miss, I believe is in the other side. So I'm not even sure.
They are.
Yeah, I don't think they play in the regular season this year. So I'm choosing them to lose in the championship game to Ole Miss.
What do you know about Ole Miss?
Not much.
Besides the Grove. That's about the equivalent. Do you know the Grove?
I know the Grove.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
You live in Georgia. You should be making road trips to these football teams to see these football games.
I hope to now that COVID is it never existed in Florida where I live today anyway. But presumably
for 3 more weeks, as you made the official announcement on Facebook today.
I did make the three more
weeks. Going back to Atlanta. He's go. Oh, that's not the right.
Well, yeah. It needed to be done, but anyway. But it never existed here. But the fact is, I live in it. I will be living in SEC country. Like I will be living in the heart of SEC country.
Aren't you living in ACC country? Aren't you closer to Georgia Tech?
That's true. That's a good point. I don't know if Syracuse comes to Georgia Tech this year. I didn't look at that. I don't think they do. But anyway, the fact is, I should be making once I buy a car. I should be making many more trips and with the top down, but or at least the top slid back.
Nobody cares about the car.
I
care. Games. You care about the car.
Well, understood.
I drive a bleeping Subaru.
I know what you do, but you're a family man.
I am a family man.
You're a family man. All right. So these are my upset predictions of the day. Give me some of yours. Give me some things that you're pulling out. You have called me out and say, especially the Nebraska pick, you are pulling these completely out of your ass. So some of those I'm sure that I just named are kind of out of my ass, especially Mississippi, right?
Yeah, that is an all-time great.
Is that better than Nebraska?
Do you have Ole Miss going to the playoff?
If they win the championship, they have to go to the playoff.
They don't have to go.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Isn't one of the No?
Top 4 teams.
Well, then there's the better question. Would Alabama still be a top 4 team?
If they were undefeated and lost in the SEC championship game, yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Look, I will say Ole Miss is not going to make the playoff, given that there's still only 4 teams. even if they win the SEC championship. I think they will have at least one loss going. I don't think they're going to be undefeated going into that game. So if they're not undefeated going into that game with a one loss, I would love to have the discussion of a one-loss Alabama versus a one-loss Ole Miss, and Ole Miss beating Alabama.
No, a one-loss Alabama team is going no matter what. So, I mean, what we have is the same thing we always have. We have two teams from the SEC, which I don't have this year. We have one
Ohio
team
State
from the Big Ten, Ohio State, and then we have one kind of rover, for lack of a better term.
So here's an interesting question for you as far as the rover. I've heard really good things about Utah. Like,
that's who I have going.
Is that – yeah? Okay. Like, I wasn't going to pull Utah out because I was like, no, I'm not going to pull anybody out of the West. But I've heard – I haven't seen anything. But at the same time, is this the best Utah team since Urban Meyer? By the way, you're surprised I remembered Urban Meyer coached Utah. I could see that in your face right now.
No, I believe you. No, I'm not.
And Alex Smith.
And they went undefeated.
Yep, 12.
Probably. Last year's team was also really, really good, but they started off slow. Because if you remember,
who's the coach there? Is that Bronco? No, Broncos. Yeah. Broncos at Utah or BYU?
Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah, Broncos at BYU, right?
Bronco went to Virginia.
Oh, right.
Then he retired this year.
Okay, right. So it's Kyle Whittingham.
My feeling is this. Any team we've never had a Pac-10 team make the playoff.
We've never had a Pac-10 team in the discussion of a playoff.
Yeah. And with the Pac-10, for all intents and purposes, seemingly in self-combustion mode at this point. Because apparently Oregon is now is reached out to the Big Ten. And if Oregon
there's no reason not to.
What are you going to? It's terrible, but there's nothing you can do.
Remember where this all started, by the way? Do you remember the first team that this started all with?
Penn State.
Yep. You know why?
Because something with the Big East in football. I don't remember what.
So Pittsburgh and Villanova didn't want Penn State in the Big East because it would infringe upon the Pennsylvania aspect of the Big East.
So that's what started all this horse shit?
That's what started this. And if Penn State was in the Big East would still be around. It would still have Miami. It would still, like, the original Big East would still be around because Penn State would have done it. Penn State would have kicked that into – I mean, look, you see the most alumni I've ever seen at any sporting event has always been Penn State. Yes. They travel.
They're the most devoted fan base.
Yeah, they're the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers of the NFL, of the NCAA. You want them on your schedule because you know it'll be a sellout. Anyway, continue on. So, sorry, Pac-10.
Yeah, so you look around. I've said the ACC I don't think is particular. I mean, I don't think Clemson runs through.
Yep.
I don't see any ACC team going.
Yep.
The Big 12 is not strong. I mean, I don't think any of these teams in the Big 12 are particularly strong. So I think there's an opening here. If Utah can get led by their quarterback Cameron Rising, can get past Florida in the first game of the season. So that's the big if.
Yeah.
Then the Pac-10, for all intents and purposes, you may be looking at a 2 or 3 team race.
Well, they also got Oregon on November 19th. That's a big game. So
they got Oregon, and then they would probably have USC.
Yeah, so looking at this. Yeah, so just looking at their schedule right now, so the Utah, you're absolutely right, plays Florida. They don't have another. They play USC on October 15th. The 14th.
USC is the big one.
And then they have Oregon on the 19th. I mean, they have 3 legitimate games.
Right. Well, Oregon is not we don't know what Oregon is.
Correct.
They have a new head coach. They have a new quarterback, Bo Nix from Auburn. And so I don't know what Oregon is this year. USC, obviously, bringing in Lincoln Riley. Kell Williams comes over from Oklahoma. Jordan Addison, who won the Biletnikoff for the best wide receiver in the country, comes over from Pittsburgh. My gut is it's going to take a year or 2 for Riley to get to that point where they're not probably a title team at this point. So I think Utah is going to be the favorite in almost every one of these games. And if Utah can go 11-0, or even maybe with one loss, I don't think people are jonesing to see Georgia again with to see a second SEC team, unless they're incredibly dominant.
So I have a question
I don't
for you.
think Georgia's going to be dominant.
So you brought up Utah and then you brought up USC. Do you know USC, other than Utah, only has one ranked team on their schedule, and that being Notre Dame in the last game? And I know you said it would take a while for perhaps Lincoln Riley to get his system in place. Were you talking about take a while, like NFL take a while, like it'll be
no, they need players
7, or will it be season 3?
No. It's going to be they don't have the players.
Okay, so you're saying season 3. It's not.
I think it's going to be season 2.
Right.
I think I don't think it's going to take a hell of a long time to get running.
It's not Breaking Bad getting used to. It's Better Call Saul getting used to. It takes a little bit longer to get into the play. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
So, and I still think USC has a very good chance of being a top 10 team when this is all said and done. The fourth team is up in the air, to be perfectly honest. And I would kind of tend to lean towards A&M, which except I don't think you're going to go if you don't make the conference championship, and you're not going to make the conference championship if you're not going to beat Alabama. You have a motivated as hell Alabama team to play A&M because, number one, they beat them last year.
Yep.
And number two, this whole controversy between Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban
is amazing, by the way. I love it. Ridiculous. I love it.
So
and we'll make the statement that we do, it seems like, with every sport now. The off the field soap operas are better than the games most of the time. And
sad but true.
It is. I mean, if you look at every sport, that's where we are, right? I mean, this is the soap opera off the field. I mean, there's the second and third soap opera, which is the Pac-10 and the Big Ten and the SEC. But we'll talk about relocation a little bit. You know, we never really touched upon that on the show as to where that's going. Okay, so we have your Heisman. We have Anderson, right? Anderson's your Heisman, which would be the second defensive player ever behind Charles Woodson. Am I correct me if I'm wrong, right? Second defensive player. By the way, in doing research on this, I came across and looking at Anderson and saying, okay, who's the second? And I remembered it was Woodson, and then I went back and looked at it, and I saw Hugh Green. And I was like, Hugh Green did that as a freshman.
Yep.
Like, Hugh Green was a monster player. I didn't realize how good. I mean, well, we were 3 years old
because we didn't exist. We didn't exist for the most
part.
Right.
We were 3 years old when that happened. But as a freshman, that's when he came in second as the Heisman. I don't know, Seth. Maybe you can tell me how many freshmen really are in the Heisman Trophy.
Johnny Manziel.
Right, but I'm saying other than Johnny Manziel, how many are even in the discussion, let alone win it?
I think, and I'd have to look back, I think Adrian Peterson was. I'm just talking recent times. Short of that, I don't believe.
Okay, so I got the answer, by the way. 5 players have finished in the top 3 of the Heisman voting as freshman or sophomore. Oh, that's before winning the award. We don't want that. 2 sophomores and 2 redshirt freshmen have won the award. That's it. So
can you give me some hints here? I'll see if I can guess.
Well,
Manziel, I know.
Hold on. So let me get the names. I don't think it says it here. Oh, it does. Okay. Okay, by the way, the youngest of the Heisman winners, and you got one of them, needed a redshirt year. So they weren't true freshmen. They were redshirt freshmen. So Manziel was a redshirt freshman. Who was the other redshirt freshman?
There was another redshirt freshman? He
may have been a redshirt sophomore. I don't know, but he was definitely a redshirt.
You got to give me a hint. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. He is known for throwing a whole lot of interceptions in the NFL.
I
And it's not Vinny Testaverde.
was going to say Sam Darnold.
No, he didn't win.
Yeah. Right? No, it wasn't Leaf because Leaf didn't win. It wasn't Manning, obviously, because Manning didn't win. Werfel wasn't. No, he was a senior. Am I going back too far?
Yes.
Wasn't Troy Smith. I'm trying to think of the quarterbacks off the top of my head that won them. Lamar Jackson won it, but he's not known for his.
And he won it as a junior.
Yeah, trying to.
By the way, Adrian Peterson ran for 1,925 yards as a freshman, and he finished number 2. So good job on that. Good job on that.
Thank you. Burrow obviously was a senior.
Michael Vick finished number 3. And Herschel Walker finished number 3 as well.
Well, unfortunately, that was the highlight of his life.
Until he wins the senatorial. I know. I'll be there to vote him out.
I'm not sure he could spell vote, him, or out. But at least we don't have to worry about having more trees.
What do you got for him? What do you got for him? Jameis Winston.
Really?
Yeah.
He was a sophomore?
According to this.
Okay.
So, not saying.
Trevor Lawrence was probably.
So Winston is the youngest one at 19 years and 342 days. After redshirting his first year, he won the starting job, and he became the first redshirt freshman to win a Heisman. Oh, and a national championship in the same year, which meant he won the redshirt Heisman. Manziel was the first one to win the Heisman as a redshirt freshman. Okay. So, surprise, surprise. But he is known for throwing a lot of interceptions in the NFL.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is. So, okay. So we were speaking before about freshmen in general. So who's your freshman star? Who's the guy that's going to come out, even if he's a redshirt freshman? Who's the guy that we need to be looking out for that's new? Because you can name a lot of guys that are like C.J. Stroud, who was on the bench, right? He wasn't the guy. And you could name guys that we may not have seen before. And look, I can say Tucker from Syracuse, who was 4th in the NCAA in rushing, but he also played last year. I want a guy that I haven't heard of. I want a guy that's maybe I've heard of due to my research, but haven't seen him on the field. Who am I looking at this year?
I think this is going to go back to something you had said before. He's not a freshman, but he's a redshirt. I mean, he's a sophomore, but he's going to be Quinn Ewers, who's going to be the starting quarterback at Texas.
Okay.
He went to Ohio State, never played a snap.
Oh, he's the guy that has the $1 million contract, right?
Yes, and I believe the mullet. I think he's got a mullet. So yeah, I think because you're saying Sarkisian's out after this year.
Correct.
And remember, and also, here's why our Sarkisian is absolutely not out after this year.
What's his buyout?
Doesn't matter. Arch Manning's coming in next year.
Oh, then you're probably right. Well, you know what the thing is, though?
And came in for Sarkisian.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you this question because not that you know, I'm not sure you've ever seen Arch Manning play because I certainly have. I wonder if it's look, we've seen this before where it's a lot of the name rec and not necessarily the play on the field, right? So I get that Arch Manning's going to Texas, and you're probably right, but I don't know. He could still stay at Texas even if Sarkisian's gone, by the way. They bring in Lane Kiffin, and he's a fan of Lane Kiffin. Trust me, I guarantee you Eli, Peyton, and Archie Manning will all be in the discussion as to who the new coach will be if that happens. Look, they were in discussions with the Giants as to who's going to be the right tackle. So, I mean, they'll definitely be in discussions as to who will be the coach. No, I still think he's out. I still think Sarkisian is out. I wonder what the buyout is, but when it comes to Texas, it really doesn't matter, does it?
No.
Okay, so you said that the quarterback at Texas, anybody else that we should be looking at, especially week 1, week 2, that we may be surprised?
Freshman, it's harder for me to gauge because I don't know who start. I don't. I mean, I know a couple of the people who've gone over, but I don't know.
Well, I'm saying even a redshirt sophomore, a guy that's coming in that we haven't seen.
Okay, well, here's going to be an interesting one who we saw on a different team across the country, and he's coming to a new team with a new coach.
Oh, this is like Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, right. Well, there's two. There's number one, there's Dylan Gabriel, who's left Central Florida and is going to be the head coach is going to be the starting quarterback at Oklahoma.
Okay.
And as you said, you brought up Jalen Hurts. In Oklahoma, between Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts, has done very well with transfers.
Yes.
Even
is he the same type of quarterback? Is he a mobile guy?
He's mobile. Yeah, he's mobile.
Okay.
The other one, and I just lost my train of thought on this. Damn it.
Now remember, Oklahoma did that with Lincoln Riley, and now we're
not Brett Venables. So we don't. So the other one, and this will be really interesting, is Jaden Daniels, who's coming over from LSU, coming over from Arizona State, the dumpster fire under Herman Edwards, as you may be aware. And he is going to be the starting quarterback for LSU under Brian Kelly.
And then we got the guy that was – don't we also have the guy transferring to be with Lincoln Riley, right? The guy at UNC.
He was a stud last year. That's Kell Williams.
Got it. I got to turn that off somehow. I don't know how to turn that off. That's not going to turn it off. Anyway. I don't know why my computer is beeping. Apologies, people. I have to figure out how I turn it off. That's how I turn it off. All right, sorry about that, guys. Anyway, okay, so tell me a little bit. So Lincoln Riley's starting his new career in USC. Tell me a little bit about what that team is looking at. What you did say it'll take. You said it'll take time, but
I mean, by time, I think it's going to take a season.
Right.
Because they don't have the players.
Correct.
But they have Kell Williams. They brought in Mario Williams, who's a stud wide receiver. They brought in Jordan Addison from Pittsburgh, who won the Blitnikoff. They have a good defensive coordinator in Alex Grinch, but they don't really have much of a defense.
Yeah.
Their offensive line, they need the grunt players. They got the name guys. They got the prime positions. They don't have the line. So they'll be a bottom of around somewhere between 10 and 15. I think UCLA runs it. I mean, UCLA, excuse me. I think Utah beats them because Utah is just a well put together team and have been for the last couple of years, but took the next step last year, and they'll continue to build even without Devin Lloyd. But they'll be very, very good. And in a year or two, they will be the favorite in the Big Ten West. Can't believe I have to say that.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what's been going on, right? So we have the Pac-10 dissolving itself, unknowingly dissolving itself. The Big Ten signing a 7-year, $7 billion contract, and which with a B, ladies and gentlemen, that's a B for what, 14 teams? I mean, at the end of the day, right? 14 teams. So you're looking at $80 million a year per year for 7 years. And so 560 by the time it's all said and done. And then you have –
look at you pulling out the math.
Then you have the SEC, who's pulling in Texas and Oklahoma. And then you have the Big 12 pulling in like 17 teams, just trying to make do. And
I think the Big 12 is going to be fine.
But is the Big 12 still a Power 5 with those teams? I mean, it's fun. Look, you could say all these divisions are fine, right? The MEAC is fine, but the MEAC is not where the Big 12 is.
Here's the question you're going to have. Are you going to end up with 2 super conferences and then everything else being supplemental?
Right.
I don't know. I assume that's what's going to happen. But I think the second tier, which will be whatever is left of the Big 10, of the Pac-10, the Big 12, the ACC, I think, has a more interesting issue, because they are a basketball powerhouse. But football wise, where are you going? I mean, I think everyone sees Clemson as a perfect fit in the SEC. But
Well,
then for all
Clemson has been a perfect fit in the SEC for 20 years. That's nothing new.
yeah, they're a straight football team. Academics are not the highest of priority. Their basketball is okay, but nothing special. Although the SEC's gotten better in basketball for the last few years. Can I see the SEC saying, okay, well, we're going to make it run at Clemson and Florida State and Miami?
That's absolutely what they should do.
Yeah.
It's 100% what they should do.
Now, the difference is and you have to look at this up.
By the way, also Miami. All three.
I said USC, Florida State. I said Florida State, Miami.
Oh, US. Yeah, it should be Clemson, Florida State, Miami. That's
well, they would pick a fourth. They're not going to pick an odd. So
we're ready to go. Syracuse is absolutely ready to go to that SEC.
Because when I think of the Southeastern Conference, the most practical.
It's going to be Virginia. Well, the thing is, it can't be Virginia Tech and it can't be Virginia.
Nope, can't be either of those. It's not going to be. The problem is, I believe the ACC has the buyout with the ACC.
It's awesome.
Is a real problem.
It's awesome. It's like 37 years.
Like 2036.
2037, actually. It's amazing.
Okay. So pretty much what team did this come after? Why did this come into play? After my boys left.
Yeah.
So because I think what you would see is I don't know who the fourth team would be to come in. They may not come from the ACC. It may come from the Big 12. But I wouldn't be surprised to see if that happens. North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, looking at the Big 10, which would be a relatively natural. I mean, I don't think it's a natural fit, but whatever. It's become a shit show.
Yeah,
it's just not as much fun. It's just not.
No, and what happens to so the Pac-10's got to go somewhere, right? Or do they? I mean, you said Oregon and Washington are probably going to be moving over to the Big Ten. I mean,
I don't know. Or Oregon approached the Big Ten. I don't know if the Big Ten is really that interested.
It's nice to be in the driver's seat, isn't it?
I guess it's not. It's still not great.
I mean, if you're Kevin Warren, you could basically choose your team, right? If you wanted to.
Within reason. Because the presidents like it because the football is great. The academics, I mean, you look at the schools there, the academics are very, very good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even if Nebraska sucked in football, which they did, they still brought forth a good academic program. So.
Yeah, Nebraska would be the one team I could see leaving.
To go where?
Them I could see going back to the Big 12.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the only issue, again, is the finance.
Yeah.
But they have not been a good fit for the conference. One of the reasons they were accepted was they were in, I think it's called the American Association of Universities that hit a certain threshold. They are no longer a member of that.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, they either didn't hit the threshold or they dropped out. I don't know which.
Okay.
So I don't think either side, and they were the most vehement about starting while COVID was still in hardcore issues.
Right.
They were the most vehement anti-Big Ten, like within contrarian Big Ten within the Big Ten conference. I don't know. I don't think Kevin Warren would give a crap if they left because the value they brought in has been. Now, look, it's not like Maryland or Rutgers has brought in a great deal of value. But Maryland has brought a DC market. Rutgers has, to a degree, brought a New York market. You knew what you were getting with that. With Nebraska, you thought you were getting. Maryland has also been, other than football, and I'm not saying this as a Maryland alum, but Maryland from other sport has been one of the better teams in other sports, winning probably 8 to 10 championships in a lot of divisions in sports just other than football. And it's very difficult to be, competitive against Ohio State, Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State, which is the best division in sports for football. Yeah. So I wouldn't be shocked if something happened along those lines.
Okay. So let's move on, right? We've talked 45 minutes college football. It's been pretty good. We have
who is your champion?
Yeah, that's my problem. So okay, I'm gonna say, because I don't want a Nebraska following me back to my next year. I'm gonna say Alabama's gonna win it because I'm gonna go out on a big leap here. Right.
I wish there were teams I could go on a limb with. There's just nothing that I see.
Yeah. So I'll have Alabama versus Ohio State in the championship, and it'll be boring, and I won't watch it, which is probably likely, because I didn't watch the last Alabama win. I only watched last year's Georgia win because I was in Georgia. Like, I don't think I'll watch it if it's Alabama, Ohio State. I just don't. What about yourself?
What are you going to watch? On a Monday night in January, what are you going to watch? The Islanders versus the Thrashers?
Yes.
The Thrashers aren't a team anymore, are they?
Doesn't matter. I'll watch it on SNY as a replay from 20 years ago. So anyway, who's yours?
My championship?
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, it's Alabama, Ohio State.
Yeah,
I take no satisfaction with that.
No, none at all. But let's talk about our favorite soap opera. Your favorite soap opera and mine, the Kevin Durant saga. Because once again, he's back, baby. And I'm not sure that's any better than if he was gone. And the only team there are two teams I thoroughly believe that lose in this saga. The Nets, I know everybody's going to say he's back, this is a good thing, blah, 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 blah. It is a soap opera that is going to hang on this team the whole year. And if you had a good deal, you should have done it, and understanding that they couldn't get one. Number two, I hate being the Laker. If I'm a Laker right now, other than getting Patrick Beverley, which I thought was a pretty good deal.
I thought so too.
There's nowhere for them to go. This is it. You're done. This is all you got. This is your team, and I'm not really sure how it makes it better. I mean, they had the
Lakers better.
Well, I know how Beverly's made better, but I'm just not sure how the team as the team as a whole is any better than they were last year. I think they're. I mean, if they're healthy, they'll make the playoffs. But are they a championship quality team with Russ Westbrook on that team? No. But let me ask you this: if they were able to make the trade for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, which has been reported, so Miles Turner, Buddy Hield for Westbrook, and the two number ones, 27 and 29. Is that a championship team for you? Because I think it's coming pretty damn close.
That's getting close.
I mean, that's really.
I don't have the slightest idea why Indiana makes that deal.
Well, for 27 and 29 first-round picks and a whole lot of cap space next year. That's why they make the deal.
5 years from I don't understand this obsession with first-round picks in 2027 and 2029. Kevin Pritchard's probably not going to be the GM by that point. I don't even remember who their head coach is because they fired the one before that a year ago, after a year.
Yep.
I'm not worried about 2027 and 2029. To me, I don't understand this. I get it if you're going a year or two into the future. But you have to be on really, really, really solid ground. And you're giving up Buddy Hield, who I agree probably does not belong on the Pacers at this point. He's not a good fit for that team. He should be a third down, excuse me. The 3-point shooter who can pretty much just shoot is when I was going to say when Westbrook, but when either whoever it is, when James penetrates and they have a shooter out for him. Fine. I really like Miles Turner. It feels like they've been trying to trade him for 4 years.
Well, for 4 years, they were busy with the Sabonis Miles Turner that didn't work combination. Now I'm kind of wondering, all right, you got rid of Sabonis. Why are you dealing Miles Turner? Like, I don't understand the concept.
That's what I'm trying to understand myself.
I mean, the team itself is a deep look. We always love looking at, quite frankly, the Pacers, right? Because the Pacers always have a number of contracts which you can trade. They're my favorite team to look for trades because they always have guys in like the $10 to $20 million range, and they never have anybody that's like 35. And Westbrook would be that $35 million, but he'd come off after 1 year. the problem that I have if I'm Indiana and I'm an Indiana fan is I got all this money next year. What the heck am I going to do with it? Nobody's going to Indiana as a free agent. Who's the last free agent that went to Indiana, Seth? That wasn't named Reggie Miller.
He wasn't a free agent.
I know. No, he re-signed. Remember, he re-signed when the Knicks were making that big, and then they went after Allen Houston. But who was the last one? Dale Davis?
No idea.
Antonio Davis was traded for Jonathan Bender, so I know that wasn't one. Yeah, I just don't. I don't see it. Anyway, I don't see the reasoning behind it. And then you have the Knicks, who it seems like they are not going to get Donovan Mitchell before the beginning of the start of the season, which quite frankly is fine with me. I don't want to give him all that.
I get it.
I just don't see it. I just don't see it.
He doesn't move. He's a nice player. He's a very good player, but he doesn't move you to a point where you're probably relevant in the top 5 in the conference, and you're giving up your entire future for it. The question is, would you rather have him on his deal or Barrett on a max deal?
But Seth, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not that simple because I'm not just giving up Barrett. I'm going to give up Barrett and 3 first-round picks.
No, you're
right?
not giving up Barrett, but you're not giving.
No, I'm saying if I gave up Barrett, it's still not that simple because I'm giving up Barrett and 3 first-round picks. So
obviously you would give up 1 for 1. That's a no-brainer. But that's.
But here's my question: But I get it. But the question is, would you? Would you look? I know Donovan Mitchell is a hell of a player, but he's also 6'1" and plays guard. Right? We already have a 6'1" guard. His name is Jalen Brunson. Not to say that Brunson is better than Mitchell. That is not my point. My point is now I'm going to put 2 6'1" guards out there and lose my wing. And if I'm my top wing player, if I'm going to make that, and remember the rest of my roster is made up of big guys like Obi Toppin and Julius Randle, or small guys like Quigley and Grimes. I don't have wing guys. I can't conceivably give. Evan Fournier is not a wing guy to me. He's a shooting guard that guards like James Harden. So if I'm making that trade, I fundamentally, unless I'm getting a wing back, cannot give up RJ Barrett. I don't have another guy that can play the wing. So what am I doing? So for a 1-for-1 for this team, I'm not sure you can make that deal unless you have another deal in the background.
I don't think Mitchell is that small, though. I'm curious. I'm looking it up.
Mitchell is 6'1.5".
Is he really?
He is a big 6'1.5", like a
broad,
firm, solid.
You're right. I didn't realize he was that small. I thought he was 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah, I'm not sure I could do that deal just because of that, and that's a big problem for me. It would be a big problem for them too. In playing defense. So, yeah, I just can't see how. Okay, so we got 5 minutes left. I'll go first. Look, the Mets lost to the Yankees 2 days. I don't care. I just don't. It would have been nice to win those games, but I'm all on the Jacob deGrom bandwagon right now. What he is doing, Seth, is masterful. Last night, 9 strikeouts, 6 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 3 hits. This is a guy that missed almost 30 months of baseball and just comes back and does this. I predicted the Mets with him in the World Series at the beginning of the year. I did on this show. If Scherzer and DeGrom are healthy, there is nobody that beats this team. Nobody. This team will win the World Series. I'll say it again. And
so this is going to be like the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2001?
Well, they have better – well, the difference is, unfortunately, due to the strike this year or the lockout or whatever you want to call it at the beginning of the year, they cut out the travel days in between during the World Series. So you're going to need 3 to 4 starters. So DeGrom's not going to pitch 3 games. First of all, DeGrom wouldn't pitch 3 games anyway. Scherzer won't be able to pitch 3 games in the World Series because there's no rest days. They're cutting out the rest days. So you're going to need a third guy. Now, if T1 Walker or Carlos Carrasco are healthy, I'm fine. Like I think we got this. And I'm really. It's good to be a Mets fan right now. Look, it's good to be a Yankees fan too. You're in first place, but it's good to be a Mets fan finally. And by the way, the last thing before we go, congratulations to Steve Cohen. And, I'm giving a $12 billion guy congratulations here. 2 years ago, a fan on Twitter said, "Hey, Steve, the Mets haven't had an old timers day in 30 years. We should have one of those." And
did Steve Cohen own the team at that point?
Yeah, it was like his first week of owning the team in November. And he said, done. Well, this Saturday, they will have their first Old Timers Day in 29 years. Now, there's a good article on The Athletic that said, for the first time when we've had an Old Timers Day, and I say we, it's a generation of Mets fans. The last time that the Mets had an Old Timers Day was the Mets had only been in existence 30 years. So you can make the claim that most of those fans weren't even Mets fans their whole lives. They were Dodger fans or Giant fans or some other fan because the team had only been in existence for 30 years. They have Jay Hook, the guy that through the first win in Mets history.
Yep.
He is throwing out the first pitch on Saturday. He's 85 years old.
I think he's an engineer. Actually.
I don't care what he is. It's amazing. It is just they have, I believe, a player from every year except for 2 coming. That is so. You know what? Maybe not congratulations, Steve Cohen, but well done.
Good job.
You heard what the fans wanted, and since you have started, you have retired Gil Hodges' number. You've retired Keith Hernandez's number. You are now doing an Old Timers Day. This is not your Brooklyn Dodger New York Mets anymore. This is now your New York Mets, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, Seth, you're up.
So all I'm going to do for my 2 minutes is read the headlines from ESPN. Sources: Mariners and J-Rod extension could top $400 million.
How many years?
It could be 40. 14 years, $400 million. But let's keep going here. Suit alleges that Foreman may have assaulted teens.
Yep.
Let's keep going.
Disgusting.
Forget the WNBA Coach of the Year. The Live Golf Tour. Great. Yeah. Bill Ariza accused of gang rape. Frustrated Mims requests trade from Jets. Remember when sports was happy and an escape?
Not recently.
It doesn't feel like that anymore.
No.
And
well, fantasy football is coming up. That's about the only thing that's the escape, right?
Yep. I got my 10th and 11th round picks.
Who'd you get?
Rashard Penny.
Nice.
And Brandon Ayuk.
Okay, so you're doing well. Ayuk has a good rapport supposedly with.
I screwed up. I should have taken Amari Cooper. I didn't realize he was still out there, but I can live with it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, next week before Seth goes on his much-needed vacation with the family, we will have our fantasy football preview, and we'll see what Seth's team turns out to be and if it's even concluded.
If it's done by then.
Right. All right, guys. Have a great week, everybody. Adios.